Today, we lay the foundation for a brighter future.
The sound of rain and regret. The rain fell like broken glass that evening, sharp against the marble windows of the mansion. Inside, silence lived like a ghost. Alexander Grant, once a man whose name meant power, sat alone at the edge of his empty dining table. The seat across from him remained untouched, as it had been for months. It was where his wife, Clara, used to sit, before she left, taking with her not just his peace, but the only part of him that still believed in love. He had built skyscrapers that kissed the clouds, but now he couldn't lift his eyes off the ground. The fortune that once made him proud felt like a prison, each dollar reminding him of what money couldn't buy: loyalty, laughter, or a heart that stayed. When the storm outside grew heavier, a faint sound drifted from the servants' quarter, a soft sob, muffled under the rhythm of raindrops. Out of habit, Alexander almost ignored it, until a flash of lightning illuminated the garden, and he saw her. Mara, his maid, dark-skinned, drenched, sitting on the back steps with a plate of food, eating in the rain like she didn't belong under a roof. Something in that moment cracked open inside him, a mirror reflecting not her sorrow, but his own. Alexander hadn't spoken much since the divorce. The staff knew better than to disturb him. But that night, something in the image of Mara sitting alone outside wouldn't leave his mind. He tried to turn away, to remind himself she was just an employee, but the truth gnawed at him. He had once been like her, hungry for belonging, desperate to be seen. Finally, he grabbed his coat and stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked through his shirt instantly, cold against his skin. Mara flinched when she saw him approach, quickly setting her plate aside. "Sir, I'm sorry," she stammered, standing. "I didn't mean." He stopped her with a quiet voice. "Why are you eating out here?" Her eyes darted down. "The others, they said the dining area's not for me. I didn't want trouble." Something in his chest tightened. He could see the truth written on her face. She wasn't just excluded because of her position. It was her skin, her silence, her difference. He looked at the trembling woman before him, rain sliding down her cheeks like tears, and realized how cruel his world had become under his own roof. "Come inside," he said finally. She hesitated, eyes wide, afraid of the weight of his words. But his tone carried something new, softness, something he hadn't used in a long time. Inside, he asked her to sit at the kitchen table. The smell of damp air mixed with the scent of fresh bread, and for the first time, his mansion didn't feel empty. They didn't speak much. She ate quietly. He just sat across from her, watching the steam rise from her plate, feeling strangely human again. When she finished, she looked up with eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you, sir." But Alexander didn't reply. He just nodded, his throat tight. That night, as he lay awake, he realized something uncomfortable. He had been living among people who feared him, not respected him. And maybe, all this time, he preferred it that way, because it meant no one could hurt him again. He didn't know it yet, but the walls he built to protect his heart were the same ones keeping it empty. Over the next few days, Alexander began to notice Mara more. Not because she stood out, but because she tried not to. She moved like a shadow, speaking only when spoken to, always polite, always small. One afternoon, he found her scrubbing the floor outside his study. "Mara," he said softly, "sit down for a moment." She froze. "Sir." He gestured to the chair. "You've been working all day? Rest." She obeyed, uncertain. He watched her hands, scarred, cracked from years of work. "You remind me of someone," he said after a pause. "My mother." Her eyes widened. "Your mother, sir?" "Yes. She cleaned houses too, before I made enough to buy one." For a moment, she smiled faintly, but it vanished just as quickly. "Then she must be proud." "She was," he said quietly, "before cancer took her." Silence filled the room. Two people with wounds shaped differently, but equally deep. Mara looked down at her hands. "When my father died, I worked to feed my little sisters. People laughed at us, called us names because of our skin. But you learned to smile anyway. You learned to eat in the rain." Her words hit him like a truth he had never faced. He had buried his pain in money. She had buried hers in silence. Both were drowning, just in different ways. That night, he sat in his study, replaying her words. "You learned to eat in the rain." For the first time in years, Alexander wept. Not for his wife, not for his losses, But for every moment he chose to look away from other people's pain because it made him uncomfortable. The next morning, he made a quiet decision. He gathered the household staff and spoke for the first time in months. No one in this house will ever eat alone again. The staff exchanged puzzled glances, but Mara, standing in the back, understood. Her eyes met his, and something wordless passed between them. Healing had begun. Weeks turned into months, and the mansion slowly changed. Laughter began to echo again through its halls. Not forced, but real. Alexander started joining the staff for meals, sharing stories about his childhood, even burning a few pancakes trying to cook. Mara became more than a maid. She became the quiet heartbeat of the home. Her laughter was soft, but it carried a warmth that reminded him of sunlight after years of clouds. One evening, as rain poured again, Alexander stood by the same window where he once watched her eat alone. Now, she stood beside him, holding 2 cups of tea. "Funny," he said, smiling faintly. "How the same rain doesn't feel cold anymore." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Maybe because you stopped watching it from behind glass." They both laughed gently, the sound mixing with thunder. Then, she said something that would stay with him forever. "Sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones with the biggest houses. They're the ones who share a table." Alexander turned to her, humbled. "You've taught me more than anyone ever has." And he meant it. In the weeks that followed, he started a new project, one that didn't involve profits or skyscrapers. He founded a foundation for underprivileged women, providing education, housing, and dignity to those who had none. When he announced it, Mara stood quietly in the crowd, tears rolling down her face. He smiled at her, grateful, renewed. Because what started as pity had become purpose. What began with loneliness had ended in love, not the romantic kind, but the kind that restores faith in humanity. That night, as he walked outside, the rain fell again. But this time, he didn't run for shelter. He stood in it, head lifted, letting it wash away everything that once held him back. He had found healing, not in fortune, not in forgiveness, but in compassion. Some behind small cloud moral of the story. True healing begins the moment we see others not as beneath us, but as mirrors of our own pain. Compassion doesn't just heal the broken, it rebuilds the ones who choose to care.